Good afternoon. This is what day is this? The February 10th, 2021. And whether you're trying to work out how efficient your sales and marketing strategies are, there is one important metric that you need to know to determine how profitable your current customers are and how much it costs to acquire a new customer. And today we're going to cover that just for you, break it down, and here we go. Good morning.
Good morning. How's it going?
It's freezing.
It is so cold.
It is. We're in the dead of winter, aren't we?
Oh, big time. Polar vortex is in full effect here.
Yeah, I'm actually a little chilly this morning. I got a little tongue-tied because I'm still trying to warm up from this morning. So
that's the only reason I became a pilot, or did not become a pilot. So I don't want to fly in the cold. That's it, right there.
Flying in the cold's not bad. It's like having to do the pre-flight and the walk around and everything, and then putting the airplane away in the snow. That's the hard part.
I can't imagine. Like, I don't like putting my truck away in the snow. I can't imagine what it's like putting a plane away.
And yeah, it's not as bad, especially when you get inside a heated hangar, but nonetheless, you still have to be outside and, your shoes get all soppy, all that stuff. But I digress. Let's get into today's show because I think, again, we've had a lot of conversations lately about marketing budgets and expenditures. And I think the one thing that keeps coming up is like, how much are people really spending on marketing? Because we all know, again, in times of crisis and things, like marketing is usually the first budget to get cut, right? And that's because most people view it as an expense because they haven't quite realized the ROI. They haven't tweaked, how much, they haven't found that sweet spot of how much they need to spend to actually get a return, and it becomes an investment. Because we all know, like, to grow a business, you have to spend money, you have to invest in the business, right? But I think there's something that needs to switch, or people need to understand, where they can view marketing now as an investment rather than an expense. And that's what I want to cover on today's show, so that way people can start taking that pocket or that pool of money and actually start making it work for them.
It's funny, we joked before the show today, like, marketers never lie. Like, they never manipulate data. They're the single most honest people in the world. So I want to get that out of the way. But one of the things I've seen, and I know we've covered this in previous episodes, but getting real and honest with your numbers makes making these decisions a lot easier. And there's probably a quote, it's probably abused in marketing, but 50% of our marketing works. We just don't know which 50%. And aside from tracking, I think if most businesses just got to the raw numbers, like, how much does it cost to acquire customers? What is each customer worth? Like, just looking at those two things and seeing, like, are we making more than we're spending to bring these people in the door?
Yeah, for sure. And a great example of this for everybody that's tuning in right now, that's listening live or catching on the recording, break down these numbers for you internally. So let's just say, for example, pick any event that you go to exhibit this year. We know a lot of them have been canceled. Last year, they just got wiped off the grid. So this year, again, you've got some events that are pending, some that have canceled, but take all that cost associated with exhibiting at that show for that amount of time. So let's say, for number's sake, let's say it's $50,000, and that includes the booth space, the registration fees, traveling to bring your team out, setting everything up, everything that's associated with just actually creating the booth. That's just the first part of the cost, right? And then think of how many people potentially attend the show. So let's say it's 5,000 people. So out of whatever your investment is into that, let's say it's 50, or what did I say, 30,000?
50,000.
50,000
people. So
50,000 people, or $50,000 to get in front of 5,000 people. So that's going to be your cost per impression potentially. You have the ability to create an impression amongst those 5,000 people. Doesn't mean it's going to get seen. They may see it, or they get banner blindness, again, all this stuff that they don't actually notice you. And then from there, I want to go one step further. It's like, if you're actually tracking conversions and how many conversations you're having at the show, now you can start to drill down and get more finite numbers of actually what a cost per lead is. And Doug, do you want to kind of explain what a cost per lead? We go from impression to cost per lead, and as we get closer to, working closer to the money, as we like to say, to those transactions. You want to break that down for people?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to look at it is you're going to have some type of traffic source. So we often use a tactics audit.
Yeah.
And we like to use okay, the T is traffic. How much did we spend for the attention? So that's what Chris was mentioning for the impressions. Then as we move down, we want to figure out, okay, what did we get, like the lead, that commitment? Whether at a trade show that's dropping their name off, talking to a salesperson, giving us a business card. So cost per lead. So in this example, 50,000 all in, we get 100 leads. We paid roughly $500 per lead. And then we start to look at, okay, of those 100 people, how many became customers? So let's say we got one customer from the show. Our customer acquisition cost was $50,000. The reason we start to look at these benchmarks from, attention, traffic, the commitment, the cost per lead, is we want to know what activities are at which benchmarks, so we can make a quicker, educated decision of, are we getting the required return for this activity to make sense? And if you want some quick baseline metrics, because I think most of our viewers are all B2B for the most part.
Majority.
So
yeah.
One of the things you want to look at is, one, how quickly do I get my first money back? Like that initial project. So am I getting an immediate return, or at least breaking even? And then what's the lifetime value? And one of the quick methods to look at is, if I take my customer acquisition cost, so let's say it was $50,000, am I getting 3 to 5x that over their lifetime? For most businesses, they need to get it back within either 90, maybe 180 days. Otherwise, they get in this massive cash flow tranche, and it's just like, I can't afford to do marketing. Like, I can't be the bank for my marketing department. And when you let off the show, it's like, well, marketing's the first thing to get cut. It's because most businesses don't have the time frame to cash flow the investment to the return. And it's not that they want to cut marketing, it's just they can't afford it. Mm-hmm. So they start to look at, okay, what can we do that's organic, or how can we leverage our salespeople? The problem I see, and why we named the episode "Are Most People Lying?" is, in some parts, what they'll do to cut down the visual appearance of the customer acquisition cost is they don't include all the numbers. So they'll say, oh, that trade show only cost us 25, because they'll leave out the travel, the sales reps, the salaries associated with the time.
M&E. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, they hide the true number. So usually when we go through our initial audit with clients and we do the tactics audit together, one of the things the first thing Chris and I do is we just say, we're going to start with some quick math. We want to know the total you spent on sales and marketing, and then divide that by the number of new customers. That number is the quickest way to determine what is your baseline for how much you paid to bring in somebody new. Yeah. You can apply that same quick method for new leads. How many net new leads did you bring in? And in B2B, when you merge sales and marketing, and I mean, you might as well get it all. Get the sales, like the salaries in there for sales and marketing. Get in like the total amount that you've paid. Get in your ad tech costs, your maintenance of your website. Get the real number. Because if you don't have the real number, like all costs in, it's very difficult for you to look at what you're doing in digital versus what you're doing in trade shows. And I can tell you, when we've gone through this exercise and we get really clear on what people are actually paying, they're like, yeah, no wonder why that marketing didn't work. We can't afford $150,000 at a trade show, because we could have flighted a monthly campaign in some other activity, whether that was digital or something like more direct outreach, like a direct mail campaign. Yeah.
Well, and on top of that, Doug, I'm not saying, again, like it has to be one or the other. It's just, where can you start allocating or reallocating funds to get to maximize that investment? And not only through the tactics audit, but then like our next step is once we actually get into mapping out the customer journey, you start to see how all those pieces of the tactics audit overlay beautifully onto the customer journey. And you start to realize, oh, holy cow, like we're completely ignoring this phase of the customer journey, or we're spending way too much in this phase. We need to think about doing steps, 1, 2, and 3 more to really maximize, the result of phase 5 of what we want. So when people can see, again, step by step how things work, then profits become predictable at that point. Because again, everybody has a sales process. Everybody has a sales cycle. We're just there to help make it more efficient, help streamline it, and help have more transparency between the sales and marketing departments. And then it's almost like a light bulb moment that goes off when we get to those real costs and we start knowing exactly what people should be spending or what they can tolerate spending in certain mediums and venues and stuff. It's a complete game changer, because now you have a checklist and a playbook, and we call it our flight plan of like how we should proceed to get from point A to point B. And again, you measure it every step of the way. And that way, again, it takes out the emotion, it takes out, opinions, because it's all fact-based there of how we do things. And again, you have it in writing how you should proceed and what you should be doing. And that really, again, what dictates where your business should go. And that's how you start to elevate your business to the next level, because now, again, you start to be optimized, you start to streamline, and you get greater returns. And then everybody's happy at that point, right? Growth makes everybody happy, right?
Yeah, the other reason I like it, it's very hard for people to hide because numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
And when you get down to actually deploying a measurement strategy, and you don't need like some insane system, like you don't need a Salesforce talking to Marquette, like you don't need this huge thing. But even just getting baseline numbers, it starts to give you the opportunity to have accountability. Like people can own certain benchmarks.
Yeah.
And then within your team, you can actually start to improve. And I see a lot of businesses, there's a lot of fear or pushback around, well, I don't want my activity tracked, or like I don't want to be held to these benchmarks. But the thing is, like when you have those raw numbers and you get real honest with what the numbers are, you can make a plan to get better. Like you can find ways to improve and course correct and just make sure that like you're on track to do what you want the business to do. But it's when we get away from quantitative data and start to just look at, oh, well, this, like there's no excuses when you're doing like the activities and following the process through.
Yeah. And again, I think that's where most people, again, like we try to cut and piecemeal together some plans or strategies, or you try to pivot mid thing, but without having that plan, mapped out in its entirety, you'll slowly start to drift. Like you mentioned, you can't course correct and come back. And everybody hates filling out expense reports and all this stuff. And like how do we divvy this up so that way I'm not busting budget here or I'm not busting budget there. Like again, all that stuff on the P&L, like you've got to get brutally honest with your departments. Again, especially now with everything going on in the world, COVID's still impacting everything. More transparency, more accountability is being put on by shareholders, is being put on by leadership. It doesn't matter if your organization is big or small. All that's becoming more and more paramount in how you operate a business. And the other thing too is, we preach digital a lot, but even in a perfect world, like preference post-COVID, we've been in this too long for people to go back to what they traditionally think of face-to-face B2B selling.
Yep.
We are just way too conditioned now to be searching, researching, doing everything online. So now again, now's the perfect time to reevaluate how you're going to rebudget, how you're going to allocate, and how you're going to deploy all those resources in the most efficient manner to continue to grow your business in the manner that you see fit.
Yep. 100%. And I know one of the big promises we have with our show is like, we want to give people like actionable takeaways. The things, if I were in B2B, that if I have not been tracking, the things I would start tracking immediately are the following. Number one is cost per lead. How much does it cost us to get a lead? And one variant that's really important, I would consider, is cost per call or conversation.
Yeah.
So, what does it actually take? Because the reason I separate the two in B2B is you'll have someone fill out a form and they end up in your system, or they subscribe somehow, or you got a card. But the cost per call, like to actually have the conversation with the salesperson, is one of the most important ones because that's often the beginning of the sales process. The next piece I would look at is what is the cost per proposal? Like how much did it actually cost us to get to the point? So we may have 5 or 6 calls with the person and then we're actually pitching. And then what's our closing rate? How many proposals do we close? And then what's the first order value? And the reason the first order value is so crucial, that's going to tell us how quickly and how much cost we recoup on our ads or anything like sales activity, whatever our total spend went into getting that person. We're going to know how quickly we get what money back. And then the last metric, which is vital, is lifetime value. Once we have these numbers, we can then figure out which dials we want to test or what marketing campaigns we want to experiment with because, hey, they're going to fall within this threshold that we're trying to beat. Yeah. And once we beat that, we can then know, okay, cool. So we can look at the growth levers and say, hey, we either need to figure out how to increase the first order value or tighten up like our sales cycle because we can't afford to cash flow sales for 184 days. So it gives you a baseline to understand, like as a business, how do we get more efficient with sales and marketing? And then it eliminates the need to slash a marketing budget because we can treat it like an investment. We're looking at this as something that's going to give a predictable return. But if your marketing's just throwing things at the board and attending a trade show because we've always done it, that's not a good enough reason to me to continue doing that same thing.
Yeah, well, especially when they're non-existent anymore. Again,
100%.
We're in the better part of 10 months now. I think of this, or maybe 9, somewhere in that thing, almost the better part of a year. That's pretty much the lifeblood, as most people would say. These events are the main source for brand awareness, getting leads in the pipeline, all that good stuff for your business. Most people would say that's their main source. That's why they go to these things. That's why they continue to go to these things. But when they're not there anymore, in a previous episode, like what happens when you lose that ability to draw those leads? I mean, you've got to go somewhere else. You can't just roll over and continue to do the same things that you're doing because it's just not working because those options aren't there anymore. So this is why I thought it was so important that we need to talk about how do you pivot? How do you start getting and doing things that's going to start incrementally improving my business day in and day out? And it all starts again with understanding where you're going and getting those metrics. So customer acquisition costs, cost per lead. And then Doug kind of mentioned again how we kind of qualify those leads, whether it's per action, per call, per proposal. There's different sub metrics that you can do in there. And ultimately, again, you want to get to what the lifetime value of the customer is. So then that way, everybody on board, from the CEO to the CFO to your sales guy, your marketing guy, marketing gal, whoever it is, everybody understands the total cost involved, and they can all sit at the table, at the boardroom, or wherever it is, and comfortably decide on a number together what you're okay with spending because it yields X, Y, or Z, right? That is the best way that we have found to start doing that, instead of just, oh, hey, I need X amount for this event and that event, and need to print 8,000 flyers and have, exercise ball, this, printed up, all those extra marketing collateral stuff, which is great. But again, if you really want to dial in and get really refined about what your marketing expenses are and really turn them into investments, you've got to look at it through that lens and have that transparency across the board. Sorry, I went a little long there, Doug.
Oh, I love this topic. We could do hours in a workshop. And to be honest with you, I think if people wanted it, I know Chris would be in. Like, we'll gladly do a live workshop if people want to go deeper in this. Just shoot us a DM. We'll figure it out. Like, we don't have it planned, but if that's something people want to understand on how to measure this, like, we will fire something up special for those interested. But honestly, man, this is one of my favorite topics. It always is. It's not the sexiest, which is why I think people avoid it, but it is the difference between having a successful marketing and sales department or not.
Well, it's having an uncomfortable conversation. That's really what it is. Because again, it's easy to talk about, the sales, all the net positive side of things. As long as that comes in, as long as sales are happening, sales activity is happening, everybody seems to be happy, right? But again, are you really getting a net positive gain, or is it just gross? Like, that's the thing. Again, if you want your business scale, if you want to have the ability for your company to increase your salary, or if you want your shareholders to get more, again, like, you've got to increase your profit margins. And now this is why what we do, I think, is so spectacular, because you can get so finite and laser focused with your marketing efforts online that it's hard for anything else really to compete. And I'm not saying you have to eliminate them. Again, you find what that mix is, and each customer, each partner is different with what that mix is based on the customer value journey. But the big, heavy moving pieces, a lot of it you can get so much better and so much more refined digitally, which translates over into direct mail or that person-to-person context. All that stuff where you're nurturing those leads to get to finally where you get to the proposal phase, whatever that cycle is, you've kind of expedited, because again, now you're building those relationships. You're having those relationships online with people, through content, through providing value, whatever, all that stuff that you would normally do on a sales conversation or at events or at a dinner. You're doing that online in hopes, again, to speed up that sales cycle. So that way, when you guys get in front of, or girls get in front of that prospect or that lead, there's already that trust. There's already all those questions that they need to know about you versus your competitors. All that's already been answered, and now you become the obvious choice. And that's, I think, what we all want, whether you're a sales guy, marketing guy, executive. You want your company, you want your product, your service offering to be the obvious choice in your vertical. I don't know if there's anybody that's like, I'm okay with being second or third.
I don't know them.
So that's it for today. Again, like, if you really want to get into the nuts and butts of that stuff, let us know, shoot us a message. We gave you guys kind of the formulas. If you want, leave a comment in there below. Maybe we set up a live webinar and we do this and we start breaking down people's, we can even do it by campaign. It doesn't even have to be by year. We can get very simplistic and do snapshots of a time frame of campaigns. So that way you're not, saying, oh yeah, let's open the doors on everything. Let's start with a small snapshot sample piece. All that stuff we can do for you.
Do some hot seats and just show them how to evaluate it so they know what to fix for version 2.
For sure. Well,
I'm in.
That's awesome. Doug, you got anything else planned for the week?
Well, in Canada, we have another long weekend coming up. We try to put one in every month. So no, just spend some time outside, in 10-minute increments so we don't freeze. But that's it.
Well, again, I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. Continue to do what you got to do to get by. I know this year keeps, dealing more blows. You have more and more events canceled. I cannot wait to get back in person and see everybody and get back to the things that we were doing. But on the other hand, I know that we also have to change the way we conduct business, and we're here to help. Hopefully you guys found this helpful. Again, leave any comments you can in there, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
See you, everybody.